People spy on people. Like, yep, we've been spying on people since
Every
we have
government.
people. Yeah. What are you doing after you log in? Is that activity kind of on par with what you're supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Is it anomalous activity? And then you can tell right away if it's an attacker or not. And it seems like there's a new ransomware attack every day that goes by, and it's not getting any better. The expression, you don't hack the cloud, you log in.
Is it worth getting into this industry? Threat hunting, is it good?
My hot take for you, I'd say always be curious, be passionate about it.
Hey everyone, David Bommel coming to you from Black Hat with Mick. Mick, great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me here.
I really want to thank ThreatLocker for sponsoring my trip to Black Hat and allowing me to enjoy this amazing conference. As Danny says, in 2025, you cannot permit all traffic and then try and stop threats. You need to deny by default and only allow trusted traffic in your network. So Mick, you work for Splunk now, I believe?
I work for a team called Foundation AI inside of the Cisco umbrella, which Splunk is now a part of. We do very, very focused cybersecurity research. And now we partnered, Serge, my team has partnered with Foundation AI to kind of help that AI journey start.
But you got to give us a little bit of your history, right? Because you worked for some really interesting people, some very influential people, I would say.
When I was 9 years old, I read a book called Neuromancer. And I was like, I want to do that. William Gibson, look it up. It's a fantastic book. Joined the military, found out I was supposed to be a nuclear engineer. I'm colorblind. They were like, go do computers. Did computers. Ended up in the government. Stayed in the government for a long time. FDA, HHS, Pentagon. Ended up at the White House, my last federal job. Last 18 months of President Obama, the 2016 election, which I know entirely too much about. And then the first 18 months, President Trump. After that, I left, ended up being the CISO for Pete Buttigieg when he ran for president in 2020. So that was unique, being the first person ever to be a CISO of a presidential campaign. And then shortly, like a month before the pandemic hit, I ended up at Splunk, and it has been such a fantastic time. Now part of the Cisco umbrella, the Cisco organization, company, family, whatever you want to call it. It has been a really, really awesome journey to get here. So I'm glad to be here with you today.
It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Mick, we're in Vegas at Black Hat. This is one of the hotels, I believe, that was attacked by perhaps younger people, should we say, some younger hackers. Perhaps you can tell us the story. Scattered Sprider?
I think it was definitely under the umbrella, right? It was, a couple years ago now, ransomware attack. It was really like a tale of two responses, because one organization, hey, we're going to pay the ransom. We can't stop working. We're a casino.
It was Caesar's Palace, right?
I had to go back and look at it, right? Because it happens so often. You're like, rinse and repeat. Yeah. And the other was, no, we're gonna top this out. We're gonna rebuild. And there's no right answer. I don't think there's a wrong answer. I don't think there's a right when you have to do what's best for your organization and company. But I think it goes to show just the sheer volume of ransomware attacks as far as the scale, the scope, and who they're targeting as well.
Yeah.
I think that shifted. We've seen that over the past few years in ransomware, and it's really terrifying to see, especially now a lot of international organizations in the UK are getting hit. It seems like there's a new ransomware attack every day that goes by, and it's not getting any better.
But in this case, it was different to perhaps like what a lot of people would expect. Like a lot of people on YouTube, because YouTube isn't always like exactly the same as real world. They think it must be a 0 day, or they think it must be like a hardcore hack to break in, but it wasn't the case.
You would think, right? It's some like digital Ocean's 11 or something like that, and like my hackers going in, but it doesn't. No, they generally Scattered Spider, and what's really, really unique about them is they're very good at social engineering. There's a skew on the younger side. They're very English speakers natively, so they call up your outsourced service provider, right? Like if you're a big company, you're a small company, you just, reset my IT passwords. They'll call them and social engineer them and trick them to, giving up the goods. And then once you have that access, unless you've got those, I call them cyber veggies in place, unless you've eaten your cyber veggies, you're going to get compromised pretty easily. And the scale and quickness that it happens is dwell time's getting shorter, scale's getting larger. Like it is a serious problem that I think as industry, we're trying the best we can to address it, but I think we're still falling a little short.
Yeah, you spoke about Marks and Sparks in the UK. There's quite a few big shopping chains in the UK that were hit. I mean, Marks and Sparks is off for a long time. Like the entire internet was down. It's crazy.
And I think it speaks to the volume of it, and it's a double-edged sword, right? You as an organization, and it really, really stinks to say this, it's not that you should expect it, but you should have a plan.
Yeah.
right? And in cyber, we do a lot of tabletop exercises where it's, hey, if this happens, what are you going to do? How are you going to respond? Who are the people going to get involved? Your legal team, your incident response team, your comms team, all these different moving parts need to, come together and be solid on it, or else you'll have a bad message. Your value overall will go down as an organization. The sentiment towards your company will go down. All these things you have to get not ready for, but just in case. The same way you do anything, just in case, just that preparation.
So ransomware is increasing all the time.
I think so.
Attacks on organizations seem to be increasing all the time.
I think it just speaks to the scale of the internet and everything, all the interconnected and moving parts, right? What we've seen a lot of compromises now is access brokers are a very, very big thing. An access broker is, you're not going to hack something to get in. Like the expression, you don't hack the cloud, you log in. So you're going to buy those credentials from somewhere, and there are brokers who specialize in that, which is just a wild thing to think about, the cybercrime ecosystem. So you buy access from that access broker, you log in and do your thing. A lot of us, we build our defenses and detections on, okay, we're going to stop that initial entry, right? It's like clicking on a phishing email. Don't do that. But when someone's already in, you assume breach. One of the folks on the team search, Shannon Davis, just published a blog today on post-logon behavior.
Okay.
So we know you're going to log in, right? That's just the nature of how things go. What are you doing after you log in? Is that activity kind of on par with what you're supposed to be doing? Is it anomalous activity? And then you can tell right away if it's an attacker or not. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of helping us get better, aside from FIDO2, right? Get MFA and all the things, test your processes, your reset plans, all of those things, like test.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what's your advice, right? Like you mentioned MFA. Is that seems to be the constant thing that we keep telling people to do. Like, what's your advice? I mean, in this like crazy world we're in today?
So, and it's weird, I've done a lot of things, and the thing I hear has resonated the most is this concept called eat your cyber veggies.
Yep.
Right? Like, you're supposed to drink a bunch of water, go outside, get some exercise, eat mostly green stuff, and you really don't, or you do the best you can, and your body reflects that.
Yep.
I think your enterprise networks are exactly the same thing. Well, you're supposed to put phishing-resistant MFA in all the places. You're supposed to patch and update all the things. You're supposed to segment those networks. But that's hard.
Yep.
Consistently, that's really hard to do. And your networks are a reflection of that. So like it's the eat your cyber veggies part. Do the right things. Like, just do them consistently.
And with this hack, I mean, the guys were phoning the help desks, right? And then they got them to reset passwords, and they got admin access and all kinds of things.
That's generally a standard procedure for it, yeah. And it's, again, I'm calling your outsourced provider. So your organization can have the most, structured plans, most structured access, most discipline, but your outsourced provider doesn't.
Yep.
Like, you're only as secure as your least secure thing. And again, going back to that interconnected ecosystem we built, it makes it a lot easier for an attacker to get in because there's so many different avenues to choose from.
I mean, you're involved in AI these days. I mean, AI voice cloning is so easy. Video cloning is here.
I am AI generated. Imagine what hackers could do with this technology.
It's like makes it so much easier for attackers. It's
exactly to your point. So when you look at Scattered Spider, they're calling in the help desk. And then you look on the other end of that spectrum where you see a lot of the DPRK fake IT workers.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Like, laptop farms and all the rest of it. Sorry, go on.
It's crazy, right? Yeah. So they're using generative AI to create these fake LinkedIn Upwork profiles. It was an article, I think it may have CNN recently. Anyway, it was, hey, generative AI, whatever model I'm using, send me a thank you email after my interview saying how happy I am they took the time. And your responses are already there, and I think it's made it so much easier and so much more common and so much better. I remember my time in the government. DPRK has always been a threat. It's been a threat for a while from a technical perspective. And you would see just fantastic malware, but the phishing email would get caught in a spam filter. So, and I think generative AI has just up-leveled that ability so much. And it's reflective now in the news where, laptop farms is a whole business economy now.
So you were in threat intelligence in the military and in government for a long time, is that right?
No, just government. My time in the military was just, computer things, doing computer things. When I first discovered APT or got exposed to it was Operational Aurora way, way back. For those kids watching, like, ask your parents about it or Google it. It's a fascinating thing, but it's espionage, right? I think when you look at espionage, the problem that your organization has is you have a budget
Yep.
What if I didn't?
Yep.
What if I had unlimited time and resources and a mandate to do it? You're not really going to stop that. Or you can do your best, but me personally, I don't think espionage is going to be able to be stopped. Just the nature of espionage itself. I think there's classifications of it that we could stop, but like as a whole, people spy on people. Like, yep, we've been spying on people since we had people. Yeah.
So I mean, is there hope for companies? I mean, is eat your vegetables?
You know, an APT group is in your threat model, then you might want to reconsider your strategy for it. But at the same time, when you're APT is sexy, right?
Yeah.
It is just, everyone's talk about, oh, I got hacked by unit, blah, 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 blah. Why? Well, because I didn't have MFA on my accounts. I didn't patch my systems wearing 3-year-old outdated vulnerabilities. So like, you want it to be this cool spy thing, that Ocean's 11 thing.
Yep.
But doing those basics, it doesn't, if someone wants to get in, they'll get in. I firmly believe that. But if you're not doing the basic things right, you're not going to stop anybody. And I think that's where the cyber veggies comes in.
So I mean, in the real world, so talk real world, right? Is it that most companies are not doing those basics, the cyber veggie thing, if you like, or is it like they trying their best, but because of like all these problems, they can't keep up?
It depends.
I like it. Well done.
It's hard to say because every organization functions a little bit differently. How much tech debt do you have?
Yeah.
What are the resources that you have to put something in place or change something, or what's the policy for it? You know, I think one of the unique things, a conversation I was having here at Black Hat was, you're a CISO at an organization. You have a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan to roll out some kind of new initiative. Well, what's the average tenure of a CISO's career nowadays?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that 3 to 5 year window. So how do you get your plan done?
Yeah.
And the new guy that comes in, new gal that comes in, new person that comes in, are they going to pick up where your plan left off?
Yeah.
Or just start from scratch? And I think those are the fascinating conversations. Honestly, that's what's great about Black Hat, is you get to have hear those conversations and have those conversations with some fantastic people, especially here. You know, the CISO Summit was amazing.
Mick, what's this book about? Because it's been sitting here the whole time.
So, Cindy Marrone and Dr. Ryan Fetterman put together Threat Hunter's Cookbook. It is such a fantastic idea. It's threat hunting, right? We all need to hunt for those anomalous behaviors on your network and find them.
Yeah.
Cool. I hear you, Mick. How do I do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
How?
So what Cindy and Dr. Fetterman were able to do was just, okay, you need these 3 ingredients. And these ingredients, I mean, you know, these 3 log sessions, these 3 commands, these 3 buckets. David Bianco, the creator of Pyramid of Pain, chipped in and helped write pieces on it. He came with a framework called PEAK, where it's prepare, execute, and act with knowledge. So you're testing all these hypotheses pretty regularly with threat hunting. And this is a fantastic, if you've never done it, if your organization is just getting started, go get a book. There's an online version. I'll find a link and send it over to you. But it is really, really great, and I encourage everyone to read it. And kudos to them for doing it. And
so it's the how, right?
It's exactly it. It's it's recipes.
Yeah, I love that.
It's really, really clever. And we wrote a book previously called Bluenomicon, where we're just essays from colleagues in the industry. And I think this is such a good idea because it's such a different way to take it, and it helps so many people. So I'm hopeful that a lot of folks get a chance to read it.
You've been in the industry for 6 months, right?
Yeah. 6, right?
More
like
30 years,
I
right?
dye it this color. That's what it is.
It's a long time. Okay. I'm interested in joining. Let's say I'm a younger person. Is it worth getting into this industry? Threat hunting, is it good place to get into?
I don't know if you can walk in off the street and do it. I think threat hunting requires a body of knowledge that you can have, right? But I have not. I think, in my experience, most of the best threat hunters I've seen have been seasoned industry folks who have been doing it for a while, and specifically.
So how do I get there then?
Be passionate. Be curious. Right. Find the helpers. There are so many cybersecurity clubs, groups, online, in-person meetups. There's going to be your tribe out there. And I think what's fascinating about cyber is there are so many different facets to it. If you want to do on the red team side, the offensive side, you want to do network defense, you want to do application security. One of my best friends is running a thing called Biohacking Village at DEF CON. So it's, you're working with medical devices. No matter what you want to do, there's something for you. And then there's technical policy village. That's a new thing in DEF CON the past couple years where, hey, we're all growing up. And if you want things to change them. And Policy Village is the way to go. So I think if you're looking to get into the field, looking to get in the industry, I'd say always be curious, be passionate about it. My hot take for you, I think if you're in cyber just for the money, you're in cyber for the wrong reason and you shouldn't be in it. Like the money will come, the money will go. But if you're doing it just for the money, I think you don't have the passion that's required in the industry. You could lose it later on, right? We all burned out once or twice.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think getting into it, just that passion and that curiosity. And I think that's what I love seeing at Black Hat, at DEF CON over the summer, at Squad Con, at B-Sides. Everyone's so passionate and just so curious about it. So I think anyone wanting to get into cybersecurity, find your tribe and go hang out with them. Find the helpers who, hey, how do I do this? I want to learn this specific thing. Like I can teach you about threat intelligence. I can teach you lockpicking. I can teach you network defense, but I couldn't teach you application security. I couldn't teach you how to, I'm not a dev coder, so I'm a vibe coder now. But, there are people that will help you. You just have to find them.
Talk to your younger self. What would you advise?
Stop and smell some more roses.
Life short.
Well, especially in a lot of the work that I've done, you're so focused on the thing and then the next thing that happens just because it's very Pavlovian where you're rewarded. There's a dopamine response for finding badness. So you keep looking for badness. And I've had the opportunity to do some really, really cool things in my career. And I think I was more focused on the work rather than the moment itself and like, oh, look at me, I'm working at the White House over the 2016 election. This is, and some of the people there. I think working in cybersecurity has given me the opportunity that little me never thought I would have. And I'm thankful for that every day. So I would go back and tell younger me, like, make sure you stop and smell some roses. It's going to work out fine.
But still get into cyber.
100%. Still get into cyber, like, maybe don't get that cat. No, I'm kidding. I would still get the cat. But I've met some great, incredible people. It never gets old. There's always something to learn, something to do. And I think, it depends on what you want to get into, because we're not even talking about the business side of cyber, which is a fascinating thing in itself. But there is something for everyone. Just find it and find your tribe. And like, people are going to hate on you, but like, that's just life in general. Not everybody's going to be your friend, and that's okay too.
Great advice, Mick. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.